I just want to say thank you again for being here. Um, because of how you do support and care and just help us, whether it's through you supporting the church with your offerings and helping us pay all the bills and the staff and everything that it takes to run the church, or whether it's through you donating and helping with events where we're raising things for back to school bash or whatever the case may be. You help us to be a church that has an incredible impact in our community. Like, this is your involvement and your stewardship and ownership of this mission God's given us, and we couldn't do it without you. Something that we're going to talk about this morning is the classroom sponsorships that we do with Gentian Elementary right down the road from us. And so the past 2 years, we've had a partnership with Gentian. It's been developing. And one of the ways that we do that is on a weekly basis, we have people from our church who go on campus and sponsor a classroom and do things from reading to other different ways that we do it. But if you, in being a part of this church, want to help by giving and supporting, you can do so with the offering boxes that are by the door. Go online to our website and set up giving there, scanning the QR codes that you see, because we're a church that loves QR codes. And we're very grateful for that. It enables us to be the hands and the feet of Jesus. And so I asked Miss Susan Bailey to come up. She's one of the ladies that goes and helps with our classroom sponsors, just to be able to talk to you and tell you about that.
Thank you, Dylan. So 2 years ago, when we first started the helping out Gentian Elementary, it was very structured. It was one day a week at a specific time after school, helping one-on-one with some of the students who were having trouble with reading. And so it was mostly the younger kids, and it was mostly reading skills or playing games that help develop vocabulary, that kind of thing. Well, last year we did it a little bit differently. Last year, it was awesome. Last year, we were assigned to a student, or assigned to a teacher or class, and met the needs of what that teacher and that class needed. So it might have been reading, it might have been supplying specific like water bottles or crayons or craft items or something like that. But the classroom that I was assigned to, it was really cool. It was a kindergarten class, and so I went roughly once a week, but I was traveling some, so sometimes I would go twice in 1 week, and sometimes I would skip a week, because it was very, very flexible, and it was really cool because I got to help with reading one-on-one with some of the students. I got to help with craft. I got to help with schoolwork, forming letters, recognizing words, things like that. I got to help with, I got asked to help out with a spelling bee for one of the other classes, which was really cool. And my Sunday school class, what a blessing they are, they helped sponsor this teacher with snacks and with some of the school supplies. And what else did we do? Tissues, paper towels, things like that that are ongoing needs in that classroom. And so we kept our teachers so spoiled that some of the other teachers were going, oh, why don't I get one of these? So what I would like to encourage you to do is no money. You don't have to spend a penny. But I'm asking you for your time. If you've got a little bit of time each week, somewhere between 8 or 8:30 and 2:30 or so when they leave, if you've got an hour block, volunteer for this. You might be reading to the students. You might be watching them at recess. I mean, it doesn't take any real skills. It just takes a love of children. So I would encourage you to do something that will help our young'uns. You might not even get like I got with the kindergarten. You might get a third grade class, a fifth grade class, more skills, whatever talents you have. I encourage you to spend that talent with these children because it is so cool. Okay, so switch gears here. Last week's sermon was Adam and Eve got kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And they couldn't go back. So what happened was they started a family. If you can go ahead and put the thing up there. We're going to start in Genesis 4. The man was intimate with his wife Eve, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain. She said, I have a male child with the Lord's help. She also gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel became a shepherd of flocks, but Cain worked the ground. Obviously, it didn't happen instantaneously. There was a little growth there. In the course of time, Cain presented some of the land's produce as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also presented an offering, some of the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions. The Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but he did not have regard for Cain and his offering. Cain was furious, and he looked despondent. One version says his countenance fell. Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you furious, and why do you look despondent? If you do what is right, won't you be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out into the field. And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother Abel? I don't know, he replied. Am I my brother's guardian? Then he said, what have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So now you are cursed, alienated from the ground that opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood you have shed. If you work the ground, it will never again give you its yield. You will be restless wanderer on the earth. But Cain answered to the Lord, my punishment is too great to bear. Since you are banishing me today from the face of the earth, and I must hide from your presence and become a restless wanderer on the earth, whoever finds me will kill me. And the Lord replied to him, in that case, whoever kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over. And he placed a mark on Cain so that whoever found him would not kill him. Then Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Let's pray. God, we thank you for the day. We thank you for the things that you've given us. We thank you for siblings. We thank you for the cheerful givers who bless you with what they have and their talents and their offerings. We ask that you bless Dylan today as he brings the word and expands on the scriptures that we've just read. In Jesus' name, amen.
Well, for as much as people talk about the different texts that I assigned to read, if you look just below the passage in your Bible where we just read, whoever's next gets to read a genealogy. So this passage this morning really centers around the idea of offerings given to God. If you think about it, what would you give God? Like, you think about offerings or coming and giving him something. What do you give the one who created all things? Because it's not like he has need of it. I mean, you think about all of the kind of works that we do, all of our best efforts, all that we bring to God. We even talk about our lives, bringing ourselves as an offering to God. What is it adding to him that he doesn't already have? And when we bring things to God, there can be this mindset, and this is certainly a mindset that, remember, the book of Genesis is written to the Egyptian, or the Israelite people who are coming out of the land of Egypt. They certainly had a view of the gods needed their offerings. These gods needed their offerings in order to maintain order in the world. These gods, you had to go and bring them offerings in order to appease them, to make them happy with you so that they would give you what you want. And what this story, I think, really does for us is it helps to kind of expose some of the subtle ways that we can kind of start thinking about our relationship with God in a similar fashion. That we need to bring offerings to God because he either needs them, or we need to bring offerings to God because we have to appease the relationship to keep his blessing. And I think it's very helpful for us as we think about just the way that we live and conduct ourselves on a daily basis. The first thing that we see in this is that ultimately these offerings were not offerings that were born out of God's need, but rather they're offerings of gratitude. And the offerings of gratitude to God ultimately means giving one's best. In this story, starting in verse 2, we see about Eve that she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel became a shepherd of the flocks, but Cain worked the ground. Cain's a farmer, Abel's a shepherd. And in the course of time, Cain presented some of the land's produce as an offering to the Lord. Notice that. Notice the language. Cain presented some of the land's produce. And Abel also presented an offering, some of the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions. The Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but he did not have regard for Cain and his offering. And Cain was furious, and he looked despondent. You see, these are not gifts that Cain and Abel are bringing to God because God has need of them. God has all that he needs. And God doesn't need them to feed him. He doesn't need them for a relationship because Father, Son, and Spirit have one another in perfect relationship, satisfied with one another. They don't need him to come and stoke his ego and make him feel better about himself. God doesn't have need for these things. And so as they're coming to it, seems very clear that the only reason why you would bring something to someone who has no need of what you're bringing them is to show gratitude, to show your thankfulness for them, for the connection, the relationship. We get this intuitively. I mean, it's why when we're opening that package during Christmas and see that present that we have no need of, that we don't care for, that we hope there's a receipt in the box so we can return it and get money back. We don't just say, well, how dare you get something I didn't care for or need. You understand that a person bringing you a gift, it's a show of gratitude more than it is to meet a practical need in your life. So, as any parent ought to, we teach our children, even if you don't like the gift, you say thank you. Like you show gratitude, you say thank you for it. The gift is an expression of that. It's an expression of care. It's an expression of delighting in that person being a part of your life. And so Cain and Abel, I believe, are coming to God with, this is why they're giving gifts. They're giving gifts to God out of gratitude, out of a place for thankfulness for who he is. And just like when you have one person who comes to you and gives you a gift that you can tell is from a genuine place, and they offer you something that is costly and expensive and shows their devotion to you, that they are willing to sacrifice in order that you may have this nice, treasurable gift, versus someone who put a quarter in the toy ring dispenser at Walmart and then wrapped it up and brings it to you because they have to bring something to the party. That kind of seems to be the scenario that's playing out with Cain and Abel. One brother is bringing the choicest of his offering, the firstborn of his flock, and the fat portions, the luxurious portions. The other is bringing just what he has to in order to maintain the relationship. Abel's showing up with something. I can't show up empty-handed. And if that's the case, then just like anyone that would come to us bringing gifts in that manner, it's no serious, like it's not shocking to us that God's response is to receive the one from Abel but not the one from Cain. You see, Cain's not bringing his best. He's just bringing something. But when God rejects him, Cain becomes furious. He becomes despondent. He becomes furious, but the question is with who? Who is Cain furious with? Because as the story goes on, it becomes clear he's not furious with himself. He's not furious with his own lack of devotion, his lack of giving out of a truly grateful heart. He's giving just the bare minimum. He's not furious with himself. He's furious with God. I mean, you think about, in some ways, the audacity of Cain. To stand before God, give him a half-hearted offering of gratitude, and then become angry with God when God looks at it and says, I don't receive this. You see, look at what Abel did. His devotion's clear. His love is clear. His care, his gratitude is clear. It's not from a half-hearted place. Yet you come just as if all I want is just something. And then I'll give you what you truly want from me. I'll bring your crops up. I'll help your crops to be fruitful. I'll bring water on your land. Whatever it is that you're trying to appease me with, this offering, so that I'll give you what you ultimately want. And the reality is that what Cain ultimately failed to see, Cain starts comparing his offering to what God received from Abel. Cain starts comparing his offering to the best that Abel had to bring. He starts saying, looking at God and responding with anger at God that God's not receiving him. But the standard that God's using for Cain and for Abel is not one another. He's not pitting them against one another. Who's going to bring me the better offering? And let me choose my favorite one out of the two. You see, Abel brought his best according to who he was, his crops. I mean, it's entirely possible that it's not that glorious of an offering. It could be significantly less than Cain. Cain could have, even with just bringing some of his, brought something much greater and grander than what Abel brought. But God's not comparing what Cain brought to what Abel brought. God's comparing what Cain brought to what Cain could have brought. Cain didn't bring his best. And this is important for us as we all pursue God. Because there can be times that we come to God and what our best is significantly less than even what other people's mediocre may be. You know, you think about someone who is struggling in their life. They're in a point of need. They come to the church, and what they need from their brothers and sisters is actually for their brothers and sisters to help them. It's not for them to actually be the wellspring that's pouring out into others at that time. And what that best may look like from a person in that point of their life may be significantly less than the person that just seems to be riding high and everything's going great. And there can be this competitive spirit, this compare and contrast of what I'm bringing to God. Is he going to be pleased with this? And what I want to make the point is when we are coming to God, each and every one of us from an individual point of view, God is not looking at what you bring and comparing it to what other people in the church are bringing him. God is looking at you, where you are, with what he has given you. Are you bringing him your best? Because you can show up on a Sunday morning and you may be someone who God has blessed lavishly, and you think and look around and see other people and think, I'm bringing significantly more than anybody else is, and think you can coast. That you can come into God's house and come to God on a daily basis when you're pursuing him in a relationship with him. And because you're doing so much better than the average person in your eyes that you're looking around and seeing around you, think, well, I can just bring my mediocre. Maybe God's grateful for that because it's much better than all that everybody else is bringing. But the point from this story is this. When we come to serve God, he ultimately looks at us about how well we are bringing according to what we actually can bring ourselves. The comparison God brings, the standard he uses for you and me, is not comparing us to others. It's you, where you are. Are you bringing what is your best? It's like if you have a new employee at work versus an old hired hand who's been doing the job for decades. The person who hasn't even finished orientation, you don't show up, the boss doesn't show up to that person and say, I need you to be my top earner and producer this week. No, the boss says, I need you to show up and learn. I need your best in terms of you doing the process of learning the job. I'm not comparing you to our star employee who's our top salesman every month. I'm not comparing you to him. He's been doing this for decades. It's not a reasonable comparison for me to try to make you compete with him. I need you to show up and do your best for the responsibilities I've placed on you this week. Learn the job, take the test, get the certifications. Do your best in that respect. And if you do so at the end of the week, the boss will be happy with you on that. Brothers and sisters, we all come to God from different places and points in our lives. And what God's asking of you is not that you show up and pretend like you've got it all pieced together like the most mature Christian that you know. He doesn't expect for you to show up and have everything laid out and spelled out like the best Christians that you look up to, or your mentors, or people that you aspire to be like. No, God expects you to show up and bring your best with the giftings, the talents, the times, the treasures, all the things that he has given you. You're responsible for looking at that and saying, what is my best offering that I can give God? Cain didn't get that. He compared himself to Abel. And he looked at God when God rejected him and said, how dare you? He thought that he deserved something more because he even just brought the half-hearted it, or because he brought something he thought was better than Abel's. But whatever the case may be, Cain's heart ultimately said, God owed me more of a response than this. Brothers and sisters, remember, we don't bring our offerings to God because he needs them. It's supposed to come from a place of gratitude for what he has given us. Not just because we ought to. And brothers and sisters, when we show up and we give things just because we ought to, whether it's attendance in church, whether it's a certain amount of giving, whether it's serving at service projects, when we do things just because we ought to, we can trick a whole lot of people around us. We can't trick God. You see, God still, at the end of the day, knows whether or not you are bringing him your best, whether you are giving him the choices of your offerings out of gratitude or not. And we can bring our gifts and we can try to do it for the sake of appearing mighty and righteous before other people. But think about the story from the New Testament of Ananias and Sapphira. This couple who sold property and they bring the offering to the Lord. But when they come into the church, they say, look at how much we're given. We're giving all that we sold this land for to the church. When in reality, they were holding stuff back. They come for a show to gain approval so that other people would think highly of them. And God was not deceived by them. He recognized what they were doing. This is both challenging and there's an encouraging side to it. It's challenging because very few of us give God the best as we ought to, if we're honest with ourselves. I mean, even as I was preparing this week, I was convicted about the fact. Like, there are times that I bring God just what I have to get by. I don't always come to him with my absolute best out of gratitude for what he has given me. Instead, I can become fearful or angry or despondent and start to look at God and say, I'm actually more concerned about all the things you haven't given me, God, than the things you have given me. I can start to become despondent or depressed or think about all the ways that things could go wrong and let my mind get consumed by that. Or I can become angry and say, God, I've done my best in some of these areas and you didn't give me the rewards and the fruit and the things I think I deserve because of it. And in both of those responses, ultimately what I'm doing is I'm not pointing the finger at the one who's actually not giving his best. Because, my friends, God doesn't withhold much from us that we need. We're told in Romans, he didn't even withhold his own son from us. So if he didn't withhold his son from us, how will he not give us all things that we need? He's promised us eternal life. He's given us freedom from our sins and fear and shame. He gives us life and breath on a daily basis that we continue living and moving and breathing. He sends rain to water our grounds and provide food for us. I mean, you just think about how blessed we are as a people. How many of you have had to, like, on a truly large scale, ever had to work on a farm raising crops? Okay, we've got like 3 people in here. 4. Okay. 5, 6. All right, this is a really delayed reaction, a couple of you. No, most of us for our entire lives have woken up, hopped in a car, drove 10, 15 minutes, and been able to pick any food that we wanted to. Even if we were having to operate on a budget, our budget was not, we're not eating this week. Our budget was not, we have extremely poor health because of hygiene issues. And there's all kinds of diseases and parasites going around in our community. Like, we are the wealthiest nation that has ever existed on the face of the earth. You know how much money you have to make to be in the top 1% of all humans in terms of earning and money? Any guesses? $32,000. And you have made more than 99% of all of humanity. Like, brothers and sisters, we're not ungrateful because God has not blessed us. We are ungrateful because we look at God and say, I want more. But yet He has lavished us with good gifts. As a people, as a nation. Like, He has lavished us with good things. And like we talked about a couple weeks ago, the struggle that we have in our life is not a struggle of God not giving us what we need. It's a struggle of controlling our desires and letting them run rampant, of not learning contentment and self-control. But when Cain brings this and he becomes angry with God, notice what he's doing. Ultimately, he's absolving himself from responsibility. Anger is something focused outward. Being despondent is something focused outward. Anger is saying there's some injustice committed against me by another. Being despondent is saying there's some set of circumstances that I'm helpless in. I can't control. Both of these open Cain up for greater evils to take place. And that's the second thing I want us to see, is that passivity, removing ourselves and our responsibility, opens the door for sin. In verse 6, then the Lord said to Cain, why are you furious and why do you look despondent? If you do what is right, won't you be accepted? Another way that's it's translated is, if you do what is right, don't you know you can lift your face up? Like, you don't have to walk around with your head bowed down like you're helpless, but you can lift your face up. But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door. Notice this isn't God promising a punishment. This is God saying, look at the scenario that's playing out around you. Look at the circumstance and realize that if you keep trying to absolve yourself from responsibility and say, oh, it's because these people didn't give me what I need, or because I'm in some situation in which I'm helpless. When you do that, what you're actually doing is not protecting yourself in any way. You are setting yourself up to be preyed upon by sin. Sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. God is saying, look, as long as you keep pointing the finger outward and saying that the problem is out there, that's why you weren't accepted. You're not looking inward and saying, because I didn't bring my best to God. You're not looking inward and saying, because I haven't made progress in pursuing God more faithfully. As long as the fingers are pointing outward, you are actually not protecting yourself or setting yourself up for success. You are actually opening the door for sin to come in, to manipulate you, to lead you into more and more despondency and more anger. And it's always going to be the other people that are the problem. It's never going to be because you are fleeing from God yourself. And what's the result of this? Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out to the field. And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. What happens when your anger for your distance in your relationship with God is directed outward? Or when you become despondent and say, I'm just helpless and I'm just being tossed around and there's nothing I can do, and it's all about what's happening outward? Well, then you always think that the answer is to change the circumstance. You know, when you read the New Testament, what is incredibly surprising to me is how almost none of the prayers of the New Testament believers were for persecution to end, were for circumstances to change. You know what they always were? God, make us more faithful. God, give us greater boldness. God, would you help us to be like your Son? They were always pleased about, God, would you change us? So that even if the circumstances don't change, we will be more in tune with you. And that is where Cain is at. He's at a decision of, am I going to blame my distance from God in this moment on my inability or my unwillingness to bring him my best, or am I going to blame it on someone else around me? How dare Abel bring and show up me with that gift? And it gives birth to hatred and ultimately murder. Cain's angry and despondent, and all the fingers are pointing outward. And what's the result of it? Cain becomes consumed and controlled and manipulated by sin, because it was not Abel who was putting distance between him and God. You see, God was still talking with Cain. Do you see that? Even after he's brought this sacrifice and it's not been received, what's the immediate circumstance that then starts playing out? It's God walking and talking with Cain and trying to give him direction about how to come back to him. You know, this isn't God being mean and vindictive. This is God saying, Cain, the choices that you are making, you are not choosing what is right. And as a result, you're suffering and you're becoming angry and you're becoming despondent. Don't you know that you can choose what is right and turn back and you'll be received? Don't you know that all of this weight that you're carrying on yourself, where you're seeing Abel and me as the problem, don't you know that if you will just look inward at how you are the one that's running and fleeing from me, that the moment you do, I'm going to be right there. That the moment that you have that posture of humility, it's the moment that you can lift your face up again, and anger will be dispelled and despondency will be replaced by the joyous presence of your Lord. This is where Cain is. God's not threatening Cain with a consequence. God is saying, look, the more that you say others are the problem, the more distance you're always going to have between me and you. And the more distance between me and you, the further you withdraw, the more sin is just crouching there to devour you, to consume you, to manipulate you, to take hold of your life. And you know what sin is always going to tell you? Sin's never going to tell you you're the problem. Sin's always going to keep saying, oh yeah, but it's still their fault. You know how you continue to make this bad choice and you keep suffering these same consequences? Well, it's still because of them back there. And you know how you keep retreating from God? Well, why isn't he running further for you? And the further you slink back and the further you keep slinking back, the more and more sin has this grip around you to just take a hold of you. And the result of it, the third thing I want us to see, is that sin, when it grabs a hold of us, often robs us of that which we value most. The Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's guardian?" Took away a relationship. And then he said, "What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So now you are cursed, alienated from the ground that opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood that you shed." Remember, Cain was a farmer. And God's saying, look, the ground's not going to give fruit for you anymore. If you work the ground, it will never again give you its yield. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. Not only is the land going to reject you, it's not going to produce fruit for you. You're going to be dependent on other people doing your job now. The thing that you were so good at, you're no longer going to have the joy of actually seeing the fruit from it. And instead, you're going to have to be dependent on other people going out and working the land and raising food in order for you to actually eat now. And not only that, the land, you know, a farmer, they love their land. This is my land. You know, when we went on a vacation a couple of weeks ago, we went and stayed on this farm, this like 1,100 acre farm in Kentucky. Stayed in an old farmhouse, which was just beautiful. And all around us, there are these fields filled with wheat and with corn. And they're harvesting, these huge combines they're going out. And we got to hear some of the story about this family and how this farm had been in the family for a couple of generations, and fights that would happen whenever they would think about selling portions of the land. Like, no, this is our family's land. God's saying, look, you're not even going to have that as a farmer anymore. You're going to be a restless wanderer. Something core and foundational to being a farmer of this is my land that I've harvested, and look at its yield. All of it's taken away. And he doesn't have it. Sin often does that. And look at Cain. But Cain answered the Lord, my punishment is too great to bear. Since you are banishing me today from the face of the earth. Look at that. This was a choice that Cain made. How often we do that when we make choices that lead to consequences, turn around and say that the person who recognizes the consequences is really the reason why it's happening. Like, how dare you, God? You're the one banishing me, not I'm the one that rejected you. I'm the one that killed my brother. I'm the one that brought you a half-hearted offering. None of that. You're banishing me from the face of the earth, and I must hide from your presence. When did God say that he had to hide from his presence? He didn't. And become a restless wanderer on the earth. Whoever finds me will kill me. He's fearful of that. And look, even God steps in and just as an act of kindness. Then the Lord replied to him, in that case, whoever kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over. And he placed a mark on Cain so that whoever found him would not kill him. And then Cain, and this is a tragic sentence, because remember, this has not been the case for any human being up until this point. Then Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of the Eden. Notice this. This is very similar to what happened and played out in the garden. It starts with a question of God saying, where is, you remember he shows up, where are you, Adam? Here he shows up and says, where is your brother Abel? It's the same thing. He ought to be here and Abel's not here. To which Cain then chooses to lie and deny and hide away further. Notice this, with Adam and Eve, they hid for a moment, but eventually they came back out into God's presence. And there was a type of promise, and God promising that he was going to restore all things. But here, Cain continues to recede away from God. All the while pointing the finger at God, saying, he's the problem. And what's the consequence of this? You remember we started off Genesis talking about how God designed each and every one of us, made in his image, to rule over this creation in ways that he designed us for, to use our giftings and our resources to find delight in the work that God had given us for in this world. That he didn't make us to just be grueling and suffering our entire existence. Instead, he designed you and me with purpose to find joy in serving him. And one of the most sinister consequences of sin is that it will take the very things God designed you for and rob you of the joy that could come from them. I'll give you an extraordinarily practical example that's been playing out this week. Anybody heard about all the stuff going on from a Coldplay concert? That man did not go to that concert thinking, I'm going here cheating on my wife, and that the result is when I leave, I'm going to be fired from the company that I helped found. My life's work is going to be placed into the hands of other people to carry out, and I'm going to be banished. But do you realize that his sin, when it was exposed, had almost the same impact as the curses that are placed on Cain? The thing that he had been designed for by God to do, to bring about good works in this world, to progress technology, the things that God designed him to be fruitful and to fulfill that mandate of being an image bearer, because he did not have control over sin in his life, because he kept drawing back. And even in the the reply, the apology letter. What was in the apology letter? But finger pointing at other people. That there ought to be consent on who can be put on a jumbotron in a public arena at a concert. Like, it's the same story. And because he did not control, because he pointed to others, because it was about how others were failing him, he kept receding. And what happens? Sin pounces and takes a hold and robbed him. Now his land, he was going to be a deserter on, a cast out from. That company he designed, he was no longer going to be able to bring fruit from or a harvest from. And in fact, his life is pretty much thrown into a wandering right now. And he will be, for all of history, probably known as he got cold played. Like, that's just, it has become a term now. Like, that's the result of sin. It plays out in the same way. It robs us of the things that we love the most, the things that God designed us to take joy in and to be a part of and to be fruitful in. Like, and I know that we're laughing at it. It is a horrendous thing that's playing out in that man's life and his wife's life and their children. This is robbing things from them. Brothers and sisters, it all starts when we start to bring God our half best. We give him the scraps, the leftovers. We don't prioritize it as having a heart of gratitude for what God has given us. And we let ingratitude, and we let anger, and we let despondency, and we let all of this putting all the blame on other people and other things, and on God himself even, from why we are suffering the way we are, rather than turning and look at the choices that we have made that have robbed us of this. It's terrifying to read that last sentence. Then Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. And I'll say, like, if you think that genealogies are boring, you're going to find out something very different when we read the genealogies and go through them in a couple weeks. Because what you see is that the line of descendants that come from Cain, they all are men and women who start fleeing the presence of God. Brothers and sisters, friends, when we flee from God's presence, we don't just take ourselves away from him. We often drag others with us as well, especially our children, especially our spouses. It's why it's so important for us to flee to God and his presence, to cast aside shame, to look at ourselves and recognize that we are the thing that's inhibiting us being closer to God. It's not him and it's not others around us. We are. And when we realize that, to look around and see all the good things that he's given us and to show gratitude, to develop hearts and minds that focus on that which God has given us that is good. Brothers and sisters, we are so good at looking around to find out what all kind of ways we can pick out what's going wrong and what the problems are. But brothers and sisters, we need hearts that are grateful for what God has given us. Because he's given us so much. I mean, we get together and sing his praises. And these aren't just made up abstract things. These are the goodness of our God coming to us. He proved that for us. God, even in this moment when Cain is fleeing from him, still shows mercy and compassion. Spares Cain from some of the consequences of his sin that others may get angry and kill him. And is that not the heart of our God that we see over and over on display? Because what we know is that as the history of God's people continued past this point in the story, they just continually kept going to more idols and other worship and turning away from God, blaming him for their choices and the consequences they suffer. And yet, what does God ultimately do? But through Jesus Christ, steps into human history and doesn't leave us in the consequences that we chose, but he suffers them himself so that you and I would have the option of coming to him and finding forgiveness and healing and being restored back into the presence of our God. That's what our Jesus has done for us. He offers it to us. Ben can go ahead and come back up, but I just want to make this point to you all. You may think, like I did this past week, there are areas in my life that I have not given God my best. I have not walked as a living offering and sacrifice of gratitude to him. And it may be from a range of things. It may be you are a Christian, but you realize that there are just areas in your life you owe more to God than what you've been giving him. I want to invite you to spend time as we spend time praying and we talk through things. Would you just focus on that and confess that to God? Let your first steps not be trying to fix it, but running back to God, which is what we're always supposed to make our first step. Talk with him, confess it to him, flee to him. Also, there may be some of you who you realize I've never given God my best because either I just wanted the good things that he was giving me and I was never grateful for it. And I never actually wanted to give him my all or to serve him faithfully. You've never actually pledged your life to God and said, look, God, what can I give you more than give you my life to serve you and to love you? And maybe there are some of you in here who that's never been the case. I want to invite you, making that pledge, coming to God and saying, look, God, take my life. Use it the way that you want it. Help me to be more like your son. That's an invitation I want you to know is extended to you. And God will receive you with open arms. If you've never made that choice, don't let it be another day. Don't prolong it. If God's working on you and you feel him drawing you, come to him. Let it be the moment that you turn and you stop fleeing away from his presence and come to his presence. And say, God, take me and use me to do great and glorious things in this world that you designed me for. Help me to come to you and be near to you and to walk in your ways. I'd be happy to pray with you over those things. You can feel free to come down during the song when we're praying. But I just want to invite us, however God's dealing with you in this moment, spend time dealing with him as well, drawing near to him, praying to him, seeking him. We're going to have the music start, and for just a few moments, it's just going to be music playing. I've got a couple prayers that'll be up on the screen if you want something to help guide your thoughts through this. God, all good things I have come from you. Would you give me a heart of gratitude that gives you my best? Jesus, thank you for showing us a life of action, lived in full devotion and offering to our Father. And Spirit, would you make our lives like living sacrifices of gratitude to our great and our good God? Spend time dealing with God however he's leading you to. And when we start singing or during the prayers, if you want to come down to the altar, feel free to. I'd be happy to pray with you as well.